So welcome to me sharing a sharing session on the Student Consultant Program. This is an exciting and interesting program, which is something which has been initiated here in Lingnan University. So we are really the initiators of this in the Southeast Asian context. It's something which does take place in other parts of the world, but not in Southeast Asia, and it started here in Lingnan University. So let me share some of the details of the program. Some of the context to begin with. The first thing we need to bear in mind as a university and as teachers in a university is that the quality of university teaching is important. And it's not important just for us here in Lingnan, it's important worldwide. The spotlight, in fact, is on university teaching. Now, why is that? First and foremost, it's because the cost of higher education is actually spiraling upwards. And it's often the cost of education, higher education, is financed privately by funding by parents of students and so on. The USA, for example, as it says on my PowerPoint here, the cost of between 2003 and 2013, the cost of university education in the USA rose by 79.5%, as opposed to 26.7% rise in the Consumer Price Index. And in the UK, there's a general unhappiness, not only over student fees, but also over student debt, because students come out of university being heavily in debt. Now that means that parents and students are demanding quality from quality education. And that quality education, as far as the student is concerned, is primarily to do with their experience of university teaching. However, there is a general dissatisfaction with university teaching. There are complaints which are voiced in the UK, Australia, and the USA. Now, whatever we think about this, whether we think this is relevant to Lingnan or what have you, I think that we want to be teachers not only because we want to avoid what I'm going to show you something which we want to avoid, but we also, I think we need to be aware that our own professionalism and self-respect requires that we do give good classroom performance. I'm going to nip out of here now and just show you a little clip from a recognized university in the USA, and this was something taken by the university students during the class. And then what I'm saying here is this is what all of us as professional faculty members who are teaching, we want to avoid this type of situation. So let's have a quick look at what's happening in this classroom. I think you get the general idea. can happen. That's in a university which is recognized in the United States, and this is something that I think all of us do not want to be happening in our classrooms. So, I want to also mention that the focus on university education, teaching in particular, has been a major focus in Hong Kong. The UGC focus, the QAC for example, focuses on education delivery, not research. And there's a general focus on teaching in the UK too. The Teaching Excellence Framework in the UK is at a league table of university teaching. And it strikes me that Hong Kong is likely to follow its suit, because Hong Kong often follows the general pattern of the UK. And it's quite likely that there'll be at some point in Hong Kong, there will be more of a focus on perhaps ranking universities in terms of teaching. I think from the faculty's point of view, you who are here or watching, I think you need to bear in mind, given this context, you may not always be working for Lingnan University. So your initiatives in trying to improve your teaching are going to be recognized not only here, but elsewhere too. Now, one of the issues we have is that the traditional approach to measuring teaching performance, which is called the Student Evaluation of Teaching System, is often misleading. It gives misleading results of actual teaching performance. And my own studies, a few years ago, suggested that one of the major influences on the evaluation of teaching, researched, was that if a teacher gives pizza in the class during the time that the evaluations are due to take place, it has a significant effect on the results. So this is something which I think we need to be aware of, that student evaluation of teaching is not an exact science and is open to manipulation. And we want to overcome that type of situation. Now, one of the most promising aspects of the evaluation of teaching is peer observation. And generally speaking, peer observation is seen to be an effective approach to increasing teaching confidence, and people, faculty members, teachers reflecting on their own teaching practice. The Student Consultants Programme is really an extension of peer observation, except rather than faculty evaluating faculty or observing faculty during their teaching, we have students partnering with faculty in a sort of a peer observation process, insofar as students and teachers are peers, in that they both are interested in what's happening in the classroom. So this is all, the context is that this is it originated in Canada, gaining ground worldwide. It's part of what we call the student voice movement, not particularly explored in Southeast Asia, definitely not. And the only initiative that I'm aware of is currently taking place at Lingnan University. And I think the principle of this student voice movement, of which student consultants is an aspect, is that teaching and learning is a shared responsibility between faculty and students. So how does it work? The Student Consultant Programme basically is the result of a faculty-student partnership. And the partnership revolves around student consultants who are trained to examine and give feedback on faculty teaching in the classroom. This takes place through regular classroom observations, consultations, dialogue, discussion, and critical reflection. And the student consultants provide the faculty with feedback from the perspective of trained students who are generally not enrolled in the courses which the faculty is teaching at the time. This is because the student is not concerned with the content so much as with the approach and the delivery of the materials. The program is 100% confidential and non-evaluative, meaning that unless the faculty member wants to use it as perhaps part of their portfolio, there is no evaluation from the university on this particular aspect of sort of teaching enhancement. And it's totally confidential, again, unless the faculty member and the student consultant agrees that they want to divulge the results. So how do we select consultants? Students are invited to apply. Generally speaking, we want students who have a high GPA, are effective communicators in English and Chinese, because often they're asked to evaluate, to consult with non-Chinese speaking faculty. We need some students who are empathetic and curious about the education process. They're interested in education. Their majors will vary. And as I said, students are not necessarily paired with faculty from the same discipline. In fact, we try not to, because we don't want students to feel constrained by the fact that the faculty member is in the same discipline. Consultants are paid an hourly wage because they're trained, they're professional in this area, and they meet with faculty on a weekly basis. And they have also a weekly seminar where they are discuss with the coordinator issue that they're coming across and receive some further training. They're trained by faculty who have some expertise in the student consultant program. Okay, so what happens? How does it take place? Well, the faculty-student interchange is like this. There's a pre-observation discussion, where the discussion is aimed at goals and aims and teaching challenges, which are what the faculty wants to achieve. Generally speaking, this is not the student consultant that inputs here. The faculty sets the parameters. This is what I want to look at. This is where things seem perhaps not to be going as well as I would like. The student consultant then observes the faculty member in classes which the faculty chooses to be observed in on a regular basis. It can be for half a term or a full term. It may even be, I think, at times it's been for a full academic year. The student consultant takes detailed field notes that break down the class moment by moment. There is an appendix, which there is something we can show you later on, which will not here, but later on, which we can put up online, which will show you just how this actually happens. So, post-observation, the student then looks at the notes that they've taken in the classroom and reflects on the notes. The partners, the faculty and the student, come together and look at what works in the classroom, what worked very well. It's not just about what doesn't work, it's what works very well, and what needs to be revised to work more effectively, because it's not something that the faculty thinks is working, it's not working from the student point of view. At the end of the arrangement, whether it's in a semester or a half a semester, whatever it happens to be, the student consultant writes a final reflective letter to his or her faculty partner, which concludes the partnership. And that reflection is all about, overall, how can the faculty enhance his or her teaching. There are benefits. Benefits for the faculty. So the faculty actually gets a unique perspective on his or her performance. It's very different from getting a perspective from a fellow faculty member. What the faculty members think might be working may not be working from the student's point of view. So this is very valuable. And it provides feedback to the faculty on how students perceive and receive the information that the faculty member is trying to convey. It provides faculty with insights on how students interact with each other and with the teacher, and the classroom itself, and the dynamic of the classroom itself. So, for example, I know one particular incident where I think a non-Chinese speaking faculty member was irritated by the fact that there were two students at the back of the class who were talking, found that irritating, and he'd moved on to another subject. I know that the student consultant was able to tell him that this was actually because they were interested in what you were saying, and they were discussing further what you were saying. So puts a totally different slant on the whole situation between the faculty and the students and the dynamic in the classroom. And also the faculty and student together thinks about how can we solve a problem which has been a perennial teaching challenge for that particular faculty. In other words, it's a continuing challenge. Okay, it helps a faculty member to take risks, whereas they may want to play safe in their teaching. When student consultants are feeding, have you tried this and have you tried that, it helps a faculty member to take some risk in their teaching. It offers insights into intangible classroom dynamics, which the faculty member may not be aware of, like, for example, cultural differences, gender issues, furniture placement, body language, and so on. It helps the faculty empower other students to take ownership of their learning. When the students in the class see that there is an observer, a student observer there, the students gain more confidence in the fact that the faculty member is going to be receptive to comments from the classroom. So it's a bridge communication between the faculty and the students, and it's also an important impression management aspect for the faculty. I talked, in a light-hearted way really about pizza, but what I'm saying is that because the student evaluation of teaching process is not an exact science, impressions are important. And when students know that the faculty member is sufficiently interested in their education to invite a student consultant to be in the classroom, it gives a good impression. And good impressions feed through to things like the course and teaching learning evaluation exercise at the end of the class. Benefits for students. Students get insight and reflect on how he or she is being taught, and they take some ownership of their education process. They're able to collaborate and communicate with the teachers, and that in many cases, I think the teachers become somewhat friendly. They become friends with the student consultant, and in a situation where students often lack confidence, particularly in our case in Lingnan University, where they may have not been exposed to professors before, they gain confidence in teaching, in communicating with university professors. In other words, they get confidence in communicating with people who they may have been in awe of previously, which is a good thing for the future, for their future. They also are able to develop tact in how they feed back sometimes negative comments to the faculty member in a tactful way. So, what about students who are not involved, not consultants? Well, they've got a feedback mechanism to to someone who speaks their language, a fellow student. If they want to point something out, they can. This means that with the student consultant continually dialoguing with the faculty member is then going to be able to take corrective action before the end of the class. So it benefits that class specifically, not the next class. It gives them confidence in participating when they can see that there's a student consultant in the classroom who's going to be talking to the faculty member anyway. It gives them confidence to participate in the classroom because the student consultants are seen as role models, and a sense of satisfaction that the faculty member actually cares about their education. So that's really a contextual and overview of the whole student consultant program. I'm not going to now invite Julie, who's going to talk in a little bit of detail.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, you said there will be training for the student consultant, and they will be trained by experienced faculty, and how long is the training? And do you have the contact or content of the training?
Yeah, we have the content. We have a booklet. We have all the sort of information and the booklet, which has all the content in a comprehensive booklet, which is quite thick. So the training is there and is designated and is set, and it's ongoing. It's not just a one-off. It takes place each week. So it's a regular thing which is sort of structured. Yeah. Anything else?
Right. As you know, my name is Julie Groves, and I will be helping Professor Jim Pounder with the Student Consultant Program. And you already know it involves faculty-student partnership, which I think is the most exciting thing about this program. I'm just going to briefly share some of the results of the program. I've had the privilege of being involved at the beginning, just in a minor way, when it first began about 3 or 4 years ago, and so I got some feedback from the initial teachers who had student consultants and the initial student consultants, and so these are some of the recommendations that they gave. We got very good feedback. So the first one says, the teacher said, the opportunity to hear my consultant's observations was very valuable. I would recommend the program for new teachers and experienced teachers alike. Someone else said, an added bonus was being able to collaborate with a student consultant early on in the week and talk through my proposed lesson plan, go through the course materials and garner advice on proposed adjustments, activities, etc. Now that is something that that teacher would have requested from the student consultant specifically, because you can tailor it for your needs. The third teacher said, if you want to be a better educator, then you must participate in this program. Not only will you gain insight about your teaching methods and will be provided with qualitative feedback, but you will also gain invaluable insight into how this generation of student learns, which is very important because the culture develops very quickly, and we can very quickly have a gap between the teacher's understanding and the student's understanding of how things are working. The last quote I've got here is, I was very impressed with my consultant's ability and courage to engage with faculty members on a rather high level to discuss issues of teaching. And another one, which I didn't end up putting in here, commented on how they didn't feel uncomfortable at all with a student consultant being there. They quickly got used to a student consultant being in the back of the room, because sometimes teachers have asked, how was it having that, knowing that someone was there writing everything down, but they said it just became just part of the normal classroom. Okay, now on to the students themselves. The actual first lot of student consultants, there were 3 initial student pilot consultants who helped to establish the program, and they did so well that they won an award for outstanding contribution to OBE on the campus. And so I had interviews with each of them, and I was very impressed with the gains that they had personally made out of the program, especially in terms of graduate attributes. I looked at the Lingnan University graduate attributes and discovered through the interviews that they had made gains in nearly each one of those attributes, and it was very obvious. It wasn't just a minor thing. I could actually see when they're coming down the corridor to me, oh yes, this is a student consultant, because I can tell that they're walking very confidently and they're greeting me very politely but very confidently in the way they were conducting themselves in the presence of another faculty member. was, you could see that they had really gained a lot. So for this one, Maggie, she's one of the things she said was, I think the biggest gain of being a student consultant would be I really understand more about the teachers. I start to understand what they have prepared before the class, like being a professor is really a hard job. Students often don't understand it. And to know what the responsibilities of a student is. As a student, if you desire a good class, you are responsible for that. If a professor gives you a discussion, you are also responsible to actively participate during the discussion. So these are insights she has gained through being a student consultant. Then we have Vivian and Tiffany. Vivian said, it takes me beyond my role as a student. This program helps me to have a better understanding of the teacher's viewpoint and to become a better student, not only in the university, but also in the society as well, meaning it's preparing her for the kinds of roles and maturity that she would need to succeed in society. Tiffany also says, with this experience, you can be confident talking to anyone or in front of a group of people. It definitely helps you for finding a job because you have to attend any interview and you are not afraid anymore. So it helps me, I think, to find a good job later on. And I think this is what university students care about much now, because we have to enter the society. So this definitely can equip themselves with the skills they need. And I know these first 3 student consultants have all gained good employment. Right, so the last one is teachers. We need your help in finding more student consultants, because as students, they're only here for 4 years. Some of them only become consultants in their 2nd or 3rd year, and so every year they're rolling over, and every year we need to find more and train more student consultants. So if you can think about the students in your class, can you recommend a student from your class? Student consultants tend to share a particular set of characteristics: strong academic performance, a high level of perception, but perhaps more importantly, the capacity for empathy, to appreciate a range of perspectives, both of the students in a classroom and their instructor. Students are solicited through faculty recommendations. We don't just take open recruitment, and are interviewed for the position. So if you would like to recommend a student for this program, please contact the director, Professor Jim Pounder, and we have some packets here that we can give you if you are interested in recommending a student. I'll hand it back to you.
Now we're going to be just talking to 2 of the current student consultants to find out from their perspective basically what the experience is like for them, and just some of the issues that they can discuss, because they are the actual student consultants themselves. So if I can just start, and Julie also will be feeding into here as we think about things that we might want to discuss with these young ladies. Now, you are Maisha, right?
Maisha, yes.
Maisha. Tell me, Maisha, how long have you been doing this student consulting thing?
I have been the student consultant past academic year, and that's 2 terms, yes.
2 terms. How did you get involved in it? How did you come to be a student consultant?
I was actually recommended by Professor Paul Wittler.
Okay.
And then we were interviewed in a group interview setting, where we were given some situation and evaluated on our performance about how we will handle those situations. These were situations the student consultant will face on day-to-day basis. So they evaluated us on our performance and really emphasis on our ability to empathize, and also our ability to observe and give constructive feedback.
Okay. Kitty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kitty, tell me again, now I'm going to ask you the same question. How did you sort of get involved in the whole process? Who recommended you and what happened?
Actually, I was recommended by Professor Mark Hampton.
Right.
Because I'm one of his, living in the hostel where he is
Right,
the
right,
warden.
I see. Right,
So
yeah.
I knew him. And then I'm also the same with Nasha, that we have been student consultants for 2 semesters, and at the first semester we are just like trainee actually for both semesters. But during the first semester, we were like focusing on the book length and how we can practice by guiding, giving the guidance from the other student consultants. And at the second semester, we can cooperate with one of the professors and have 3 sessions of both the observations of classes and also a meeting with them.
So basically, you're not only be trained, but you act as trainers too, right? Yeah. How do you develop the skills? How do you develop those skills you need to be an effective student consultant?
Yeah, actually it's by practice.
Right.
Because at the very beginning we really did not know much, but after we practice and we really go to classroom and type everything on the appendix every class, and like every 3 minutes we get used to it, and after every meeting, actually, I mean the meeting with the professor, actually they know that we are just trainees, and they will provide us some recommendations for us to be better consultant, so
Okay.
that maybe in the next few years we can do better.
Aisha, let's get back to you. What happens then when you've done this sort of, all this stuff that's happening in the classroom, and then you meet with the faculty member? What happens then?
So for the first academic year, we are trained. So during that time, the professors were aware that we will come and meet them.
Right.
And usually when we are actually doing it independently, we will also first send the email to our assigned professor, introduce ourselves and what we are going to do, and set a meeting and decide the parameters, what the professor wants from us and what we can offer to the professor, because we are student consultants. There are certain things we can offer, but for example, we cannot redesign the study material. Maybe we can give recommendation, these materials student found probably not interesting, or it can be made better, but we cannot do it ourselves because we don't have the expertise. So first we meet with the professor and we set the parameters and things we are going to work on, and then eventually class by class we meet every week with the professor, track our improvement, advancement, or if we see this is not working. It's just actually the whole beauty of student consultant program. It's not a rigid system. It's evolving with every student and every professor who is in it, and it's also very customized to certain subjects and certain professors.
Can you give us all an example, without mentioning any names? Can you give an example of one problem that you came across, that I'm going to ask you, well, Kitty, that you were able to point out to the faculty member, which then you believe enhanced the classroom dynamic?
I can think of one example, that is I was observing an early morning class. It started at 9 a.m.
Right.
And as a trend we have in Lengnan, the students sleep really late, and so the trend in the class was students are not as enthusiastic or as hardworking in the morning session. But I also observed another session that's in the evening. So students were really warmed up and really enthusiastic in the evening session. So since it's we have 2 classes in a week, half portion of the course is enthusiastic and students are really learning, and other half wasn't really, I would say, very productive. So what we started doing on the morning class, we will have a little game before the start of each class,
Right.
which we essentially kind of awaken the students, warm them up, and really get on doing the work. It might seem that it wasted the time of the class, but the games we started playing, it were more the course related.
Right.
So it was not hampering the progress of the course.
Okay, thank you. Kitty, let me ask you the same question. a particular issue or problem that you identified which you thought you resolved with the faculty member?
Yeah, actually, the faculty member I was cooperate with last semester, he is quite a very good teacher actually. He always asks a lot of questions and make the class very active. But then I find that sometimes when he's asking questions, he actually prepared the answer by himself, and he will directly answer the questions by providing some examples that he used to before. But as an observer, I can hear the students speaking Cantonese and how they react. Actually, I find that maybe they are quite passionate to answer the question, but there wasn't a chance because the professor has already answered it. So I recommend the professor maybe he can try to ask some simple questions and give maybe let the student answer by giving their personal examples. Maybe that will be more innovative and the student can participate more. Actually, the professor has done very well because actually he also prepared quite a lot of questions that allow the students to answer. But I think sometimes maybe for the questions that required maybe an example, the students are actually very creative for it and they just are eager for giving an answer. So maybe I have told the professor to try it, and actually we make quite well practice.
Very good. So let me just ask you, what has been the best thing that you've got from this being participating in the program, and the worst thing? If there is a worst
Any
thing.
downside?
Yeah.
Actually, maybe the worst thing is also the best thing because I'm sometimes very nervous because I have to cooperate with someone who is like an authority at the very beginning,
Right, yeah.
and I find myself being quite worrying that maybe I will be a bit impolite by saying some maybe some shortcomings that the professor made. But after that, sometimes when I report to him some minor stuff, he will feel that maybe that is too minor, so I shouldn't mention it. Like I report that a few students just keep looking at their mobile phone. So did he want to do something to address it or to solve the problem? But then he told me at the very beginning that after my suggestion, he told me it's a very quite quite a problem that actually everyone has tried, but we can't really solve it. You know, everyone is adults, so I feel quite nervous at the beginning because it's like blaming me for doing like reporting the wrong thing that I shouldn't have asked. But then he told me that actually at the beginning of the course I have told the student to do it, but after the prolonged study they may have forgotten it or forgot what I have said at the beginning. So what I would do usually during education is firstly be very straightforward and be a like very strict teacher, but after then the restriction may be released a little bit to let the student feel you are nice. And actually I'm doing some tutoring for the primary kids on my own, and I think his like what he had taught me is quite adoptable for me.
You learned something too, right?
Actually, I learned this from him, and I think it's quite meaningful for me.
Excellent. Very good. What about you, Maisha? What about best and worst?
Well, I'll start with the best. It's just the relationship I have with my professor after the student consultant program. It's it's a partnership basically. The teachers, they're really good teachers and they're really good at it. And I also learned that I'm also good students and we are good at being students.
Right.
And these two best things when they come together and they collaborate, and really something good can come out of this whole partnership. And I really experienced that I also learned how to give constructive feedback and how to really because when I first started I used to give a lot of details in my observation which would end up being very lengthy.
Right.
But I eventually learned through the process and with consulting with the professor what are the things they would like me to highlight. They would probably not like me to highlight how many people use the phone in the class, which I would probably do on my first day of consultancy. I would include all the details.
Right.
One student fell asleep, two student ate,
Yeah.
three student used phone.
Yeah.
But the point is how is the proportion, what proportion of the students were paying attention and what proportion wasn't. And
Right.
being very concise and also being detailed at the same time, that's a really a skill to have.
Right.
And I learned that from this process, and I think it's not only useful for my academic career or academic years, but also in my professional year, because we will constantly have to write reports when we are in workforce, and this is really a refining skill to have and really an advantage. And the worst thing I can say is it's very hard because it's very lengthy because we have to observe the classes and we have to record everything. It is really time consuming,
Right.
but I think it's still benefiting, so I don't see it as really a shortcoming.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Julie. Yeah.
I'm not sure that I have anything more to ask because the questions,
Yeah,
the questions I was
yeah.
going to ask you've already answered.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
well done.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. That's it. Thanks, girls. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
It's right on time for my
Yeah.
class.
Good.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's
Very
at
good.
1:30.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Please
for
grab
the
a
time.
sandwich. Grab a sandwich if you
Yeah,
like
we
to.
did. So thank you.
Okay.
Switch
So
it
we'll
on.
get
Yeah,
together.
switch
As
it
you
on.
can see, this hasn't helped recruit any more students or teachers yet.
That was okay.
So we'll start contacting some teachers who've got some packs made up so they yeah, hopefully we can.
Hopefully, it's a really a good.